No, he's not. I you too.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we're live.
Thank you. We're calling the Measure VP Stockholder Oversight Committee meeting to order. And yes. Okay. That's okay. I need help. Okay. And I believe that I will do the invocation as we open up. Heavenly Father, we just come before you right now in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. We praise you and thank you. We can do nothing without you, so we acknowledge you in all our ways, that you will direct our path, that we will make wise decision with what we will do with the stockholders' money. And we give you the thanks in the name of the Lord Jesus. We pray. Amen. Now we open up on the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. So I want to make an announcement. Is there anyone that have a public communication? Yes. A roll call. I tell you, I told you I need help. Roll call.
Chair Latta, Vice Chair Jackson,
Here.
Member Hernandez,
Here.
Member Marta Cárcamo,
Here.
Member Orozco,
Here.
Member Rodriguez,
Here.
Member Nguyen. Let the record reflect Chair Latta and Member Nguyen are not here today. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll ask for public communication. Is there anyone that can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. We're asking for public communication. Is there anyone that wish to speak? We have a 3-minute spot.
3 minutes or 5 minutes? John Rios, resident for 45 years. One of the things that I've been coming to his meetings, and one of the things you guys cannot agree on how much to give to everybody. The purpose of that tax was to put a sports complex and to help the police department. To help the community, yes. But the main thing was for the sports complex. And it seems like we're dropping ourselves to other areas, to the schools, to nonprofit organizations, without putting an effort on to buy a school and start building the sports complex. There's, I would say, 3 schools, and they're supposed to close 2 more this coming year. So we should start talking to the school board and see what's going to take for us to buy the property. You know, yes, we want to put a sports complex, but let's be realistic. The schools are renting the fields out on a weekly basis. We shouldn't give the schools any money for their baseball field or give Manny another $1 million to repaint the basketball courts or whatever. It wasn't meant for that. like I mentioned, it's basically for the sports complex, which you guys should be focused on talking to the school. You know, let's not play around with 500 here or 5,000 there, you know. Let's focus on what that money is supposed to go to. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is Javier. I just have one request from all of you. Can you please speak through the microphone loud and clear? Because sometimes you're speaking, I can't even hear you here. I got no problem hearing Enrique, Councilmember Damian, Manny, but the rest of you, I mean, please don't be like some of the council members. What they do, they even go to with the microphone and swing it out of the way. So please, you know, because I've been thinking about not coming anymore because I need to hear what you're saying over there. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse Plata, a resident, committee, assigned, appointed to committees. Mr. Rios said it's very important. And I did not get together with him to discuss this, but it's very obvious. And you have the committee right there. You have the power right now to take the city in the right direction. What was this meant for? It's not for this other organizations that are coming here. I heard some things that are ridiculous that they're coming over here. Last meeting that I attended right here, I'll go a little farther back. When the police got their share, I'm not saying that it wasn't well spent, but it was not intended for that. They came here with an agenda, unlimited amount of time to sell it to you. I only get 3 minutes. You had Parks and Recreation do the same thing. Now, you should cut down on Parks and Recreations and make sure that they use their money wisely. Mr. Rios pointed out, you gave him so much for what? And we'll go into what the city might be looking into in the future, the sports flag. And we don't have the space here. If you're going over there to La Puente and seeing what they have a lot of land. Now, if that takes place here, you have to have enough fields, like 7, to have a game going on at the same time. That's at prime time. Do we have that land? No. Should we have 2? Probably yes. Now, some of those league coaches came over here or asked. You had 2 of them that succeeded and 1 that failed. You don't reward failure. I don't care where it is. Mr. Jackson can tell you very clearly in the Bible, if you don't know how to budget, you don't deserve any more. So we probably only need 2. And last time, Mr. Enrique asked you if you wanted to have the meeting at the senior center. And then he goes and tells you, I prefer over here. You have to go and see where you're going to get the citizens of Baldwin Park. I think the correct place would have been over there. Right here, somebody just pointed out the way that you treat them, the way you have your speakers. You're not addressing anybody over here. Well, let's make sure you take your vote and direct it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I see that there's no one else want to communicate, so public communication is now closed. I want to ask a question. Is it okay to address? Okay, well, I want to address some of this before we go.
Pastor Jackson,
Yes.
no, it's very brief responses that you can give.
Oh, what?
Just very brief responses to anything.
Okay. we are in process with the sports. We're in process with the schools. So the ball is rolling. And just keep watching the ball. Okay. Now I want to go to the new business. And Measure PP sales tax financial update.
Hi, my name is Albert Trin. I'm the accounting manager for the finance department. I'm here to fill in for Rose Tam, the finance director. So I'll provide the financial update for the Measure BP as of May 31st. The tax received from the inception through May was 7,537,356. The interest earned from the fund was 101,535, which results a total of 7,638,891 dollars in revenue received. The expenditures, the list of expenditures that we have approved by the SOC committee and council totals the $2,647,232. With the total revenue and expenditures provided, the projected fund balance as of May 31st is a little under $5 million, which is the exact amount is $4,991,658. And that is the financial update.
Any colleagues have a comment on the financial report? Anything like that? Okay. Then we will go
Pastor
in.
Jackson, can I just say one thing? This report is published somewhere for the public to see, Enriquez, or?
Yes, it's published in the website, on our website, Greg, member. Just like the agenda, it's part of the agendas.
Okay, so the general public, Mr. Rios, Mr. Plata could see where the expenditures are taking place at, and that we've had made expenditures toward the sports complex. Was just, the ball is moving. It's just moving at this speed right now. So thank you.
Do they need a motion to receive the report?
No, not the update.
Okay.
All right. Number one is the pilot program, community empowerment grant youth sports organization.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a new business item. And in a way, it's a continuation of the last two SOC meetings in which you had undertaken a discussion on how to best set up a framework for community grants. We've called them several things. We've called them micro grants, we've called them community grants, we've called them neighborhood grants. We're going to settle on calling them community empowerment grants. And in this case, at the direction of the SOC committee, in light of extensive deliberations that became a bit expansive in scope, it was felt by the SOC that having a more focused segment of the community to be used as a pilot would serve the process a good purpose. And so you directed us to come back and propose a pilot program of community empowerment grants to be offered to youth sports organizations that are based in the city.
meaning that they're organized and they serve the community of Baldwin Park. Not nonprofit organizations, sports organizations that are organized outside of the city. They're organized here in the city. And so you may recall that we had some reference grant programs from other cities, which ranged from very simple to a bit more complicated. The SOC committee felt very strongly about ensuring that we kept the application process simple, but yet accountable. Accountable in the sense of ensuring that the money was being spent for the purposes approved by the SOC and for the purposes of benefiting the youth organization. So we developed a proposal that is before you that if you were to approve it as is, then we can go ahead and run with it and start offering it to the youth organizations. Obviously, this is for your first consideration, and if anything that you would like to change, modify, amend, or enhance, we obviously would do that, and either can come back with a revised proposal, or if it's a minor modifications, we can make the modifications administratively and then still proceed with making this available in some form. But what I would recommend is that we go over each of the criteria. You have a time to consider it, and then we then present it in final form in August. So depending on your comfort level, but let's go over the criteria that we prepared that sort of underlie the general premise of this proposed community empowerment grant. Number one is, and it's in the report, of course, but that we set a total amount for this program, this pilot program, to be $30,000. The maximum grant that any one applicant can receive is $5,000. The organization, the mission of the organization must be in the support of youth sports. It must be registered as a nonprofit, 501c3, recognized by the IRS. The organization must be run and operated primarily by volunteers. And we say primarily because many organizations, when they get to a certain level, say, for example, Little League Baseball, as an example, the local staff are all volunteers, but once you get into the district staff, they actually paid staff. And when you get into the national, most of them end up being paid staff. That's true of most youth organizations, including AYSO and others. So that's why we say primarily volunteers at the local level. The request for funding can cover anything from equipment, supplies, travel for tournaments, special training, upkeep of the facilities and fields. The funds will be disbursed on a reimbursement basis. This is something the SOC considered and deliberated, that you felt that rather than provide all the money upfront and then them showing receipts, instead we will go on a reimbursement basis, meaning we will pay once they have made the purchase or the expense. But recognizing that the very reason why organizations would come to the SOC for assistance and funding is because they obviously are short of funding, that we would provide an advance so that they can set it up and use it as a revolving fund. An advance of up to $20,000, up to 20% of the amount of the award. So if we were to grant somebody a maximum of $5,000, then 20% of that would be $1,000. Receipts and proof of payment shall be required for all reimbursements. And we're giving a time of 1 year from the time of the award to expend the award. So it's not open-ended. It will have 1 year to be able to invest the amount being awarded. Now, this is a pilot, and clearly, you know, would this be adequate? Is it more than adequate? Is it just the right amount? I mean, I can tell you, for example, that in the weeks leading up to the SOC considering this, there was one organization that had approached us, and this is actually even before the SOC considered the pilot program. There was one organization that is coming back of sorts, the football youth organization. I want to call them Roadrunners, but it's called something else. It is the Roadrunners. Okay, Roadrunners. The Roadrunners, they had gone on a hiatus, and they're coming back this year for the first time in several years. Well, they're buying equipment for the first time all over again. And their bill just for the equipment alone, $30,000. $30,000, just the equipment. So I'm saying, well, is 5,000 enough? Well, you know, of course, anything helps. You know, organizations, they do fundraisings themselves. They seek sponsors, any number of ways in which they can raise funds. So we shouldn't pretend to be looking to fund their entire expenses. So I felt that 5,000 could definitely still be of help, even though they have significant expenses, such as the equipment at $30,000. So if the way in which once we roll this out and we provide a time to submit requests and all of that after the SOC gives us final approval, the program would be rolled out from here. However, the awards, because it's the granting of money and the appropriation of money, the awards themselves would be subject to council approval. So the SOC would recommend the awards to each awardee, and then those would go to the city council, and the city council would have the final approval for the grants themselves. But everything else will be done here within the premise of the SOC. So with that, Mr. Chair, I turn it back over to you. You will see in the attachment, we included the application, which is the part that the applicant would fill out. Is pretty simple and straightforward. The application packet itself, it's only 2 pages, so we definitely stuck to the tenet of keeping it simple. Thank you, Shirley.
I want to ask a question.
Yes,
We have the Baldwin Park grant. We have the SOC, and we have schools that give for school events and equipment. How do we fit in with the 3 givings? Do they come from one to another, or to another to one, or one and then that's just it?
Mr. Chair, you're referring to can the schools apply?
Yes.
So we excluded school-based organizations from this pilot.
Okay.
These are non-school-based organizations. So these would be all the nonprofits that operate outside of a school umbrella. So the basketball team at a high school, for example, wouldn't be able to apply in the pilot. I think eventually when we consider the full range of community grants, then I would suggest that we definitely include school organizations, but not in the pilot.
Okay, so the pilot will just, dealing with the children or the kids, young people, their basketball, their football, their wrestling and baseball or whatever, that they can come and, apply for a grant.
Correct.
They come also to city and apply for a grant.
They can come to
council.
this SOC, this program.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I'm asking, can they come to city council as well?
Well, they would have to go through this process. If they want to apply for the community empowerment grant developed by the SOC, they would have to apply through this.
Okay, what I'm referring to, they have the, what they call it, is it CBD grant? The federal grant that, they,
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think nothing stops an organization from approaching the city council on any number of programs that the city council may consider. But
so can they do both? That's my question as well.
well, the city council does not have a set established program for
Okay.
granting of money to youth organizations. We have the CDBG, which is what you're referring to, Pastor Jackson, and that has a specific criteria of it has to be for organizations that provide services to lower income residents. And we talked about the criteria that's associated with that program. That program is in place, and yes, it is at the jurisdiction of the city council.
So with that in place as well, with the churches want to come to apply for a grant to meet the need, not of the church, but the need of the community. Is that eligible?
Through the CDBG,
No, through SOC.
through this?
Yes.
No, this is strictly for youth sports. The pilot program is only for youth sports.
Only for youth sports.
The larger program, once you do develop it and approve it, that I envision it being a wide range, including for church affiliated organizations.
Anybody have a comment?
I do have a question. So this is what we approved to take a look at a pilot project that we can establish, right? Before we come up with a program to move forward. Now, remind me if I'm wrong, was it specifically only for youth sports that we wanted to do this, or did we want to do a small grant for like open to the public and residents?
No,
Was
the
it
pilot,
specific to youth sports?
yes, for the
Okay.
pilot, yes.
Okay.
As a streamlined way of learning how this process could work. Because, we have well-established organizations. You even went as far as to say that it be 501c3 organized entities, not just any entity, but those that are organized already in the form of a 501c3.
Yes, I just wanted it for clarification because I don't think that was the understanding that you had, since you were asking if other organizations like churches can apply for this. So I was just actually posing the question more for clarification, so everyone's on the same page.
On the other hand, as well, we have other people that come in from other cities to join our basketball or baseball or whatever event that we have. And is there a separation in giving a grant with people that did not belong to the city that are on a city team, or it goes all in one?
So the criteria as it reads right now is that the organization must be established in service within the city of Baldwin Park. Let's say, and I keep bringing up Little League only because I coached in Little League and know some of the residents' requirements. But let's say a kid were to sign up for a team that operates in, or a league that operates in the city of Baldwin Park, but the kid herself or himself does not live in the city of Baldwin Park, we would not be looking at the kids themselves. We would be looking at the organization.
Okay.
I have some comments on that, just because in the when it says to be eligible for funding, it just says providing a youth sports service that benefits the Baldwin Park residents. So if we want to make it specific to like that the team's established in Baldwin Park, we might want to tighten that up, just because I can totally see someone coming in and being like, oh, my league benefits Baldwin Park because we have residents who are in here, or like making it so that if it's a youth sports, that a certain amount of people on their team have to be from Baldwin Park, just because I really want it to be that it's functioning Baldwin Park citizens and there's children, or if it's based off of, or if it's based in Baldwin Park, because there also might be teams that are outside the city limit but service a majority of Baldwin Park's residents in their team. That might be something where that benefits rather than like if they're just based in Baldwin Park.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So further require that the participants within the organization reside in the city of Baldwin Park.
And just
If-
one thing I also want to comment for this is maybe opening this up to not just youth sports, but youth enrichment. I think that might be a good way to pilot it, to see a diverse way of seeing who comes, what the needs are, because I know when we started this and we looked about like what the target things we want to accomplish with SOC is youth development, and youth enrichment was one of the goals. And this I know fits into that sports complex area with youth, but if we can capture it all in one go to just test it out, that might be interesting. So it's not so youth sports can participate, but also in case youth arts wants to maybe pilot out this grant, we might venture out to more things, because I know just looking at, we're heading into summertime, if we want to do like a organization that targets youth might want to take them on a field trip, it might be really cool to have money to spend to do that, and not just, but they're not youth sports, so they feel like we can't do that. I would really love if we can do something that generalizes a lot more youth in the community.
Yeah, if you recall, Member Rodriguez, that the whole reason for why we gravitated toward doing this pilot and a far more narrow segment was so that we could learn from the rollout of it and not overly complicated in terms of, eligibility and other things. So I think that still holds true if we keep it just to sports, but do this quickly. I mean, we're hoping that if we will revise the criteria, including we'll now add the eligibility for the participants to be city residents, and anything else, we'll bring it back for final adoption in the fall, in August. And then after that, we can roll it out. And but we also have to learn the uptake, right? We may be thinking, oh, folks are out there dying to apply. If we make it too complicated, folks may not necessarily say, well, you're requiring way too much, we're not going to apply, or you're not offering enough money, we're not going to bother. I mean, we don't know if that's going to be true or not, but that's why it's important to roll it out, and then we get feedback and you get to see the field of applicants and you get to hear from the applicants. So I think rolling this out in a pilot, that's why we called it a pilot, but in a very narrow segment, in this case, the sports organizations, makes a lot of sense.
I'm looking at this application and it's simplicity of it, that anyone could fill this out, this application for a grant. So I don't know if you guys have seen this yet or not, but I think that's pretty good there on doing that.
I will say, yes, I was looking at that and I do appreciate that you guys put it together. And I think it is what we were talking about, Enrique, just like you summarized, we all agreed. I think we voted on getting a pilot project rolled out to see what would come out of it and then move forward with creating something. So, I think it's a simple application. I mean, if we do want to add that that the individuals be resident of Baldwin Park, I guess we can make that change. But other than that, I think it looks good. I think it'll be good for us to pilot it. The only thing that I would probably consider is putting a time frame of how long do we want to pilot this project for? And how are we going to start, looking at the process? Like, do the applicants then send them, like, it looks here like to Shirley, then do they get reviewed by the office first before it comes to us? Like that's the only part that I was missing from here.
Great point. So let's assume that at your August meeting, you give us the final okay. Because we'll present it in final, we'll make the revisions that Member Rodriguez brought up. And so let's assume that that's the timeline by which we can then roll this out. We will publish it. And, we have a list of sports organizations that we know of, but that by no means is all inclusive, but it's pretty thorough. We will send it out to all those contacts. And we will have a 30-day application period from when we publish it. Well, that means applications need to come in within 30 days. That way you have a chance to review them all at once. However many get turned in. And so by the October SOC meeting, you will have all of the applications that were submitted. We will vet them for eligibility and that kind of stuff. Maybe we make recommendations to the SOC, and then you can make your final decision on award at the October meeting. And once you make your recommendations of awards, then those would go to the city council. And let's say that at the latest, we would be at city council in November of this year. So we were saying give a year for the expenses for the funds to be drawn down. Shirley and I thought we would restrict it to a fiscal year. So the fiscal year would end in June of 2025. So they would have roughly 6 months to spend the money.
There was a request made, I don't know if it was done or not, but the request was the minutes that we took from the very beginning, for a copy of those minutes, that we can stay on target of why we have established this program, what the community wanted, that we could see it. Do we have written minutes from our beginning?
For the last meeting? Oh,
No, I'm not talking about our last meeting. I'm talking about when we started out, we had our community meetings.
oh. From when we were developing the
Yes.
very early stage
Yes. Uh-huh.
Before it was even Measure BP, right, Ambassador Jackson?
Well, I think we were already Measure BP, but we wanted to find out what the community wanted.
Yeah,
And
we
do
had
have the
presented a
minutes from
summary of that.
meeting? Those meetings.
We
Shirley,
did-
you wanted to,
Yes, Vice Chair, we did pass a summary out to the entire members of just a brief summary of everything that was requested at these town hall meetings.
Okay. Okay. Do you guys have that?
It was a couple months ago. Maybe no. It was after the January, remember?
Yeah, and I think
did
it was,
on a summary.
and I think it was just a summary. It wasn't like, bullet points or items of the requests that were from each meeting. But I see what you're getting at, like, just so we can highlight, like, this is what the community wanted. This is what they requested, and then this is what we're giving them back, right?
Yes, so we
So-
can stay on target.
So you adopted the investment opportunity categories. Those were a reflection of all those
Yeah.
notes that we and what the community had
Yeah.
had
Okay. I
given us input. So that's become our guiding document, the investment opportunity categories. So this particular grant, empowerment grant, is the city and community empowerment category.
Right.
So we do follow the guiding document that you adopted.
Vice Chair, if I may,
Yes.
over here.
Yes.
I've got a question. Do any of you know if these, like, say, for example, the road runners and the little leagues, do they offer the residents any type of, I guess you could say, scholarship grant, where if a child can't afford to pay the full price to join, do they allow like a discount? Or because I was looking at the road runners, and that's a great organization that has benefited our community for many years, and I'm glad to see it come back. But if you have a child from the age of 7 to 14 who wants to play tackle football, they're charging $500 to play. Children 5 and 6 who play flag football, the charge is $350 to play. And then cheerleaders age 5 to 14 pay $385. Um, if you're a parent of 3 children, let's just say 2 boys and a girl, and let's just say 2 boys, are playing tackle football, that's $1,000, $385 for the daughter to cheerlead, we're talking about $1,385. So, that's also something to take into consideration, because at the end of the day, when we promoted Measure BP and we were out there, this is prior to Measure BP passing, kind of to the point as Chair Jackson just mentioned, is that we wanted to know what the priorities were for the community. Because at the end of the day, this was a tax that we as the residents were going to pay, right? None of us want to pay a more tax, but we voted to pass it because we promised the community that we were going to allocate this funding for what their priorities were. And so for me, I mean, even though, trust me, I want to see all of these organizations succeed, they're not going to succeed if they don't have the children to play. To me, my priority is the children. I want to make sure that our children are able to join these leagues, versus I'd rather give the money for the children to play than for these leagues to go out and, request 5,000 or whatever it is. That's just something that has come across, because I've heard of parents mention to me that they would love to have their children join these different sports organizations, but they have, 2, 3, 4 children, and they can't just put one and not put the others. And so when I hear that, it is heartbreaking, because if you want to see your children succeed in youth sports, yet they don't have the financial ability to be able to sign up for these organizations, and we're sitting here allocating funding to these organizations, is it wise for us to continue to fund the organizations, or would it be wise for us to put something in place that's going to allow for these children to be able to join these organizations? So I don't know if these organizations have some type of scholarship program, but that might be something that we would want to look into. Because again, I would hate to hear that some of our kids in our community aren't able to afford to play in these sports organizations.
Well, you can look at it in a related way, whether the organization, say, for example, the Roadrunners, perfect example, they needed to buy all new equipment, and to the extent that the registration fees are charged to pay for the cost of the equipment, if an organization requests funding to buy equipment, that means that they would be charging less for the registration. It can also be structured in a way, if the organization requests funding for them to directly subsidize or offset the cost of the registration, by virtue of using the money for something else, that's one way to lower the cost of the registration. So it depends on how you peel the onion, right? But I just thought that for us to be able to be taking applications directly from parents or residents may be a bit cumbersome. It's best probably to work through the organizations, but we can also create a category in which it can be strictly for scholarship. If an organization requests funding for offering scholarships to offset the registration, then that's what the money would be used for, to offset directly reduce the registration cost, or for families who would otherwise not be able to afford the registration. But who can be the arbiter of that? I suppose the organization would be the arbiter. Can they in fact have the financial need, to not, or do they in fact not have the financial resources to pay the registration? As long as the organization validates that, that's all we would care.
I like to address, Danny. Roadrunners, yeah, it's $500. They do have, I spoke with Coach Rick a few weeks ago regarding registration, funding, et cetera. There is a slight discount per child. It's not hundreds of dollars, it's $50, $100, depending on how many children you have there. On my side of the fence, Tough Kids, we have renamed the recreation scholarship program to like a grant, because the scholarship program had years ago, it was 10 papers long and people didn't want to fill it out. Manny has streamlined it to a point where it's a 1-page type of application. And probably 80% of my kids that are in Ballpark right now, I kind of force them to sign that paper, and they're getting 70% minimum back on the registration a month. So I approached Coach Vic at Ballpark American. He said, we'll put it out there if they want to pick it up. He's not really forcing them to do that, but there is funding through the Parks and Rec that we, myself and Mojico Judo use. Probably 60-70% of my kids are on the scholarship right now. Same thing with Mojico, and it's funded through the park. And I would probably address Manny how that all works, what funding that comes from. But there is funding out there. It's just, I think it's a very simple form. I mean, it's a birth certificate, a water bill, and a driver's license, and poof, there's money available, so there's additional forms like taxes, et cetera, to get 100%, but I really don't know that final 30%, how that all works, but I think Manny can address that.
Yes, thank you, Coach. In regards to the scholarship, we do have the ARPA reimbursement program. I don't specifically recall what our balance is, but we have been operating this program for the past few years, and it's been very beneficial. We've utilized it for Little League, Tough Kids, Mojica Judo, Taekwondo, and a wide array of other activities, in addition to the itsy bitsy and mini sports programs that we have within the RCS department. So it is a very good program. I believe, if my memory serves me right, we reimburse 70% of all of the funds. So if a youngster or parents pay $100, we reimburse $70. So it is a very, very good program. Thank you.
Matt, if I may real quick, Manny, on that, you said that's from ARPA funding, right? That was allocated.
Yes, sir.
When does that expire, and do you know more or less what the funding and balances left on that?
I don't recall offhand in regard to the funding balance, but I could definitely circle back. I just sent a message asking staff what our balance is. In some cases, believe it or not, some parents do not want to fill out the paperwork just because they're busy or whatever the case is. We also have a similar program and it's called the child care subsidy, and we reimburse the parents for child care. So these are two programs that are very popular in the community, but for whatever reason, because maybe the busyness of the parents, they just don't want to fill it out. But for the ones that do fill it out, it pays for 70% of all fees. Thank
That's
you.
great. So maybe, and that's being promoted, right? Maybe we can get that out to,
Yes,
for the
sir.
road runners and because the little leagues are over now. When does this, do you know when this expires?
Well, it's allocated until the funds are expired. I do not know the balance offhand, but I could definitely circle back and maybe I'll have the balance in the next few minutes. As coach started talking about it, I sent a message out to staff to find out what the balance is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Greg.
and just as a FY, one of the programs usually do not exhaust all the funds, so we transfer the funds to the other account to exhaust all the funds. Because our number one goal is to exhaust all the funds in the community.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one last question on the pilot program. Was this a figure that the city came up to 20% upfront? 'Cause I know we bounced it around that 20% wouldn't do it, cause the youth groups would need the money up front to buy the product or items or equipment. But you guys came up with this 20%. I don't recall that in the last meeting. We're bumping it around.
Yeah, we came up with what would have been a reasonable, short of it being an advance of the funds in whole, which would say we provide all the funding up front, and then folks just give us proof of expenses and payments, that we would retain the money, still the majority of the money, but not handicap them by not giving them any startup money. So the 20% seemed like a reasonable amount of money for them to get going, but it can be higher. Is that, were you thinking that, Chair Orozco? I mean, Member
Yeah,
Orozco?
I thought we were at 50% or do you remember, Sasha? I don't
I'm-
recall.
Totally against the reimbursement. I don't like the idea of them not participating in this just because they feel like they have to put money up front. I think if anything, a better solution would have been that the city pays for it. They send a list of like what they're gonna use the money for and the city pays for it, and that's how it goes. I think that might be the most efficient way, just because, like I said last meeting, I don't like the idea that someone comes and they're like, well, I don't have enough in my credit card to even afford to do that. Like I don't have $1,000 credit, or I'll have to take a loan just to get reimbursed. That's still something I'm very, very still against. I think that's very limiting to our community. And I also want to point out that is that true that if you give the money that like registration fees to like the actual organization, will that help out rather than giving them money? And what do you think more beneficial with that, Greg, as our youth person?
I've seen the program work both ways. In East LA, the funding's to the youth groups, and the registration fees are $5 for the whole Little League season or something like that. And they have, they do a trifecta type of sports program there. They do a basketball, a baseball, and a football, and the kids pay $20 for their insurance card for the year. So I've seen that beneficial in that area. Registration fees, it's a tough time for everybody. $500 would make me jump back in my seat too, for to play tackle football. So registration fee up front to help out youth programs such as the Roadrunners. That $500 is 2 years ago, myself and Manny, the mayor of Ballin Park, we sat down with the old board of Ballin Park Roadrunners and looked at the numbers, and that $500 is, we came out without any uniforms at $350, $380 2 years ago, right after COVID. So that $500 is a cost. The insurance, et ceteras, the lighting for the fields, it goes on and on. So I see both sides of it.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking, to give the organization the the leeway to decide where they have the highest need. I mean, sometimes an organization can land a really good sponsorship that's specific for something. And if they have already done that, then, you know, their need may be somewhere else. So that's why if they are able to tell us, or they request the funding in the areas that they feel they have the greatest need, you know, it'll be up to them on in identifying what that is. If, you know, I do know for a fact when I was coaching, we had trouble paying the lights. And sometimes we would turn off the lights before the event was even over. Folks were sort of walking over on top of each other because we would shut off the lights so that we would save on the cost of the lighting. So, you know, it's any number of areas where the money can best help.
Yeah, I see it, on the other side of the coin, Mojico, they fundraise and do their side of the money thing to send kids traveling to Florida to for judo competitions, nationals, etc. Same thing with Tough Kids. We go up north, San Jose and San Francisco to wrestle in the state events up there. So everybody has different needs. Last year we seen the girls softball team travel to Western Regionals in Arizona. So things do change, and it's by organization. So you could look at it both ways, and each organization has their own needs and wants as years go on. So, Brad.
So could you explain a little bit more? Is it that you would like to see the full amount of scholarship paid in advance?
I would like to see it at least 50%, because if somebody needed uniforms, are they gonna give $2,000 down, and then the fiscal year they get paid in 8 months later, they're not gonna have the uniforms for that season. But if they get a 50% down, and we talked about the league's fundraising the other portion or something to that effect, to make sure that whatever they're fundraising for or asking for the grant, it happens in that season or that year.
So both sides are working it. We grant and you work to supplement what.
Right. If they pull out a credit card or they fundraise that other part to get paid back by the city, but it does happen in a season or a year. On the other side, Enriquez, it's paid back at the end of the fiscal year, or how would that work for them to get reimbursed?
Yeah, we weren't saying that we would pay it at the end. We're saying they have up to the end of the fiscal year to so if we go with a 20% advance or whichever 50% advance, but let's say they give us a proposal to say we are going to restripe the field, let's just say, but they don't do that until later in the year. They have X amount of, in this case, we're saying by the end of the fiscal year to restripe the field and submit for reimbursement. As opposed to if they incur the expense immediately, then they will give us the request for reimbursement right away, and we would pay it right away.
Okay.
But they have up to a certain length of time, we say until the end of the fiscal year,
Use it.
to do the activity that they had proposed to do.
I believe Councilman Damian made a statement last week to start low and end up high, not to start high and end up low on the giving. Could you explain or you remember that?
Yeah, I was trying to recall the last meeting because I was just asking Shirley because it kind of took a shift. I remember last time we were talking about beautification of neighborhoods, and now we're here discussing youth sports grants. So it kind of it threw me off. But I was saying if you guys were gonna, if I can recall correctly, it was if you guys were gonna request or consider a grant reimbursement program, that it would be best if the pilot was going to be start small and then see how that works. And then depending on the need and the categories, then you could probably expand it. But it would be, I wouldn't consider going high for the first pilot program. Kind of start low, see how that goes, see how the reimbursement, how the applications and all of that goes. And if it goes well and you see that the need is bigger, then at that point in time, you may want to consider either increasing the amounts or increasing the categories. Because this is brand new. I don't think the city's ever done anything like this before. So, we have to be very careful how we conduct this pilot program. And we don't know how it's going to come out. We don't know if, I always say sometimes these types of things open up a whole can of worms, right? Because right now we're talking about the youth sports, where you're going to have a whole other list of categories that are going to come knocking on your door and they're going to say, what about us? Right. And so now you're going to be put in a situation where you're like, oh man, we only have a certain amount of funding to give. Yet we have a big line out there of people asking for it. Because that happens, so that's something that you really need to consider, because whether we like it or not, we need to put a cap, because if not, funding's going to run out. And, one thing to consider is that, yes, I know that the sports complex is something that we're working on right now. It's obviously we're kind of, I want to say the mercy of the school district, because we're waiting for them and their legal team to figure out how that's going to work. But we want to make sure that we're going to have adequate funding to be able to pay off that bond. So, you're going to have to put a cap on certain things, because there's a lot of things out there for the community that we need to fund, right? And we need to show the community what Measure BP is being used for. A lot of people may not want sports programs. A lot of other people may want events, or, just there's a lot of different things. Everybody's different. So we can't just cater to one category. We have to kind of sit there and figure out, okay, what is going to benefit the majority of the community? Because then you're going to say, well, I don't even have any kids. Why am my tax dollars going? And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just speaking, we have 70-something thousand residents, and not every one of us thinks the same. So I'm just thinking out loud, where someone may say, I don't even have kids. Why is my tax dollars going to pay for sports programs? I don't care about it. But you, on the other hand, say, well, I do have kids and I do want sports for my kids, so I'm going to support this. So that's why I say it's better to invest the money in something that's going to be wider open for the community to come out and enjoy, from your youth all the way to your seniors. That way you kind of just don't have someone saying you're kind of picking and choosing who you want to support and then who you don't. So that was my recommendation and suggestion for that.
I noticed that we have been bouncing. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna echo that, really. I think there were a lot of things discussed in the last meeting, and I think at the end, because it was so much, there's so many things we were discussing about the request from the city, and the residents and what they're gonna want. Some may want to fix, plant some trees. Others may want to fix a sidewalk. Others might want safety. Others might want different things. And I remember you talking about that, city council member Damian, and, to start low and high. And I remember, we talked about having it an easy application. And then at the end, because there was so many things going back and forth, we decided, let's create this pilot project. But to me, it seems like we're not really all in agreement to having this only for the, sports, or the youth sports, because I heard, we want for youth enrichment, which can, mean many other things. And then I also heard, like, maybe residents may need scholarships for their kids to enroll in these programs. And this pilot project is not open to any of those things. So I don't think that this pilot project really is something that we thought we really wanted. I think it was just like, let's come up with something so we have something to review. And I don't think this will fit the need of what our community has been wanting. And then just to also add on to what you were asking about the minutes, I do recall getting a summary of all the meetings. I myself took notes for most of the meetings, and not a lot of the people were talking about funding nonprofit organizations that are looking at empowering youth sports. And then I'll just give you a couple of the highlight of the notes that I took. Yes, they were talking about the sports complex, but a lot of the community members that came to our meetings were talking about safety. They were talking about lighting. They were talking about homelessness, the safety of the community members going to the stores and having extra security at the parks, having extra security at the parks and at the senior centers. They were talking about how we need more parks and recs. I mean, just looking at all the things, school police, none of this really, of the notes that I took, I mean, at least what I'm looking at from like one of the meetings, none of it really talked about, investing in nonprofits for youth sports, specifically. And this pilot project will not cover any of the things any of us have been discussing throughout this meeting, which is scholarships for kids that don't have the means to be able to participate in sports. So I think this is a great pilot program sample. And I think this just kind of brings more to the reality that we need to look back at all the notes from all, if my, if whoever, anyone else from the committee attended those meetings, let's pull our notes versus a summary, and let's actually get on target with what the community wants. And if the community is going to want more safety, more lighting, more security around the parks, then I think that's what we should look into. And also the sports complex, which we've already invested money in. So I mean, that's just my kind of
Well,
like my summary.
Let me suggest, Member Mata Carcamo, so that we don't enter into a circular discussion, because we have done that several times. And that is what led us to come up with a way of exiting the circularity of the discussion, because they got way too expansive. The number of things that could be provided in the name of community requests. We talked about physical improvements in the neighborhoods. We talked about the arts. We talked about any number of ways in which the community could request assistance via the community grants. So instead, we felt, let's really figure out a way to create the mechanism by which the wider range of community assistance programs can be provided by creating a pilot. By definition, a pilot is defined as something that is narrow and more specific. And we felt, the SOC did in the discussion, that the youth sports organizations would have the infrastructure in place to be able to, provide a request for funding that's already somewhat vetted, because they're in the business of putting in proposals, raising money, and what have you. So that would enable us to learn from the pilot. And that's why it was narrowed down to just youth sports in non-school affiliated organizations. Because the feeling was that, schools already have some source of funding, whereas the community-driven organizations, those that are run by volunteers, are in a constant struggle, either to maintain the registration fees affordable, or to be able to provide the kids with the right kind of equipment, whatever sport it is. But we did say, have it be in the sport, not because sports are any more important than anything else, or not because the SOC is in any way saying we're only going to focus on sports. Your intent is to address the entire range of community needs, but we need to get there by first learning the best mechanism to provide the means by which folks can apply and you can grant. So this pilot will give us that learning experience because as Councilmember Damian said, we never really offered these sort of grants. We offer grants when, well, we have never offered these sort of grants, never.
Committee members, I'd like to circle back and interject real quick. Councilmember Damian asked me when our ARPA funds will be exhausted for the scholarship reimbursement. We call it recreation subsidy reimbursement program. So it's not only sports, it's arts and things of that nature. The funds will expire December of 2026. And as of today, we have $21,284. So those funds are the funds that are being used at the community center. Your program, Tough Kids, utilize it. Mohica Judo and Little League and football, whoever would like to participate in those programs. But once again, just recap, funds will be exhausted December of 2026, and our balance as of today is $21,284. Thank you.
Any other comments?
So I just have a question. Are you guys okay? Is everyone okay with approving this pilot project?
I think
We would
should
make the
work.
change where, well, let's see, first on restricting it to city residents, and then raising the advance to
Clarify
50.
for that, I didn't mean restricting it to city residents. I meant that either the team is based in Baldwin Park, that the coaches are like in Baldwin Park, or that most of their students are residents of Baldwin Park. Whether that percent be like 40 or 60, just making sure that it's not limited, like that every single person has to be a resident, but that's majority resident or a fraction of residents. If you get what I mean by that. So to clarify. would
I
be-
understand what you're saying there, because actually there is some framework that I work with the fireworks stand. 70% of my kids have to be a resident of Baldwin Park, and the framework I have to have my roster submitted, etc., to even apply to the fireworks stand. So there is framework out there, and I think criteria of 70% would be fine, or 80%. And you know, the entity that 501c has a business license, which Tough Kids does, Mohico does, Scotty does. We all have a business license here in Baldwin Park, and our practice facilities are here in Baldwin Park. So 3 criteria I think would solve the issue of knowing that the people that are applying, they are Baldwin Park entities, and they're the best interest of the youth sports in Baldwin Park.
I also still want to push to make it youth enrichment programs, just for more applicants instead of just youth sports. That's also just another critique if we are targeting on this.
And that was my question is because this is only for youth sports or not youth enrichment. So are you okay with, because we would have to modify all the wording, right? Because all this is for youth sports organizations, not youth enrichment. So we don't want also the residents to be thinking that this could be for them because they may not have a nonprofit. So I just want to make sure that we're all understanding what this pilot project is about.
I understand, but those are just my notes of what I would like to see, what I'm pushing for, what my opinions are on this document. That's whether or not that gets approved. We'll find out, I think, in August, but those are my notes of, for me, this document, really, if youth enrichment be, again, youth enrichment that are targeting for, have a business license already in Baldwin Park that prioritize Baldwin Park students, that's like, it wouldn't be to me a big adjustment. It's just not just youth sports, but also enrichment that are benefit our youth, whether that age range be 7 to 12, 3 to 14, what that ever means of youth, because also youth sports is kind of vague and thinking, okay, is 13 the limit because they're no longer like, they're still youth, but they're teenagers with youth. That's also things that are just questioning that I would think of. I And also the reimbursement. I'm not a fan of reimbursement, just of my own opinions of thinking of saying, I really like if someone asked me today, hey, you need to pay for this right up front. I'm like, my credit card can't handle that. And I'm thinking of other citizens, especially if our focus is people who are run, that this is not their full-time job. This is the volunteer experience. It's mostly run by volunteers and they have other obligations. I would be stressing thinking of having them pull out thousands and thousands of dollars when this is supposed to make their life easier. And those are just my notes.
Something we could do is, if you, I mean, we would request that you keep the range narrow to sports organizations, but we immediately go to work and develop an other framework for in this case, the youth enrichment, which encompasses intellectual, academic, artistic, you name it. It's quite, and you know, we would definitely need more time to develop that, but we can immediately go to work on developing something specific to youth enrichment. But
So
we
this
would ask that you
just be
keep,
a pilot program for others as well.
yeah, I mean, we could do another second pilot. Usually you do one pilot, but you know, we can do another pilot as well subsequent to this.
Well, I think before we do that, we have to come into mutual agreement in how we're going to accept this or changes or whatever that we need to make it applicable.
I mean, I think the change of increasing the advance to 50% makes sense so that folks, in fact, have the ability to have cash on hand to do their things. So if that's something that you would direct us to change, we would increase the advance to 50%. The 70% of the service participants would be required to be in the residents of the city. That's a good threshold, 70% as opposed to 100%. We can make that revision.
I don't know, but I think, would you like to table that and put more consideration of what we're doing, or you want to go forward?
Well, these are just edits. There's nothing for sure. That's why we're just having this conversation to suggest edits for next time. Next time it's another conversation and whether it gets approved or not. I prefer not table it and just give our suggestions. They're not something that we all have to agree on, but at least have them out there, see what everyone else is thinking about this as well. I think I've made my points really clear what I want to see, what I would suggest. But just so we can start guiding this in what everyone else is thinking.
That's our democracy. That's how
I
we
agree
work.
there. I think, you know, by expanding this pilot program, we're gonna add 10 pages of documents to get all the criterias in there and another 3 to 5 months of trying to figure out those criterias, et cetera. But this is lean and mean and we can take this and bump out the edges in the next meeting or so. So I think making the small revisions and getting the pilot program running is my opinion. Thank you.
So that's what we're do, make revisions on the next meeting and the next meeting till we get it. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking into my to make revisions until we get it at this meeting, next meeting, another other meeting, until we come to a commonality of what we need to do with this pilot program, because this first program that we have will constitute how we will deal with the other programs that are coming up. So I don't know, how do you say it? Table it or come back to it?
Make the revisions, we'll come back, make the revisions to the criteria that you directed us to do, and then we'll bring it back in August for your next and final, hopefully, consideration.
Okay, one of the revisions that is suggested is the 50%. Okay,
Correct.
Look at this.
There were a couple of revisions, actually. I think it was the 50% advance. And then there were the criteria of the residents have to be at least 70%, right?
I think
Correct.
60, I'm not sure if that's too little or too much. Thinking of like Greg's advice.
60-70%. I mean, that's a majority of students or athletes that'll be in the program. So 60 or 70%. I just use the same framework out loud, what the fireworks stand requires me to have. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I used the 70% mark because that's the framework that the TNT fireworks require me to have in place to have a fireworks stand here in Ballin Park. But 60% is still majority of the students or athletes in each program. It'll still be the majority. So 60 or 70% is fine with me.
So the revisions that they just suggested was the 50% upfront and advance for payment. And then it was the up 60%. Is that what you're saying? At least 60% of residents?
Yeah, at least 60.
And then
60?
60,
At
60?
If
60.
if
Okay.
the committee thinks that it should be 70, like I said, we're
George, what do you think? 60, 70%? No matter. Haven't heard from you today.
In the mic too. I know.
I don't know. It's a hard. It's for me. It's a hard decision because we have other things that my members are the community asking me, and where's the money is going. I mean, we gave money for the police department, which was one of the priorities, and there's some other priorities. I'm not objecting to youth enrichment, but I think we should give it a thought to all this, but there's our other priorities. I'm not saying that the kids are not priority. They are priorities, but when we promoted the Measure VP, we promoted a lot of things for the community. And to me, honestly, it put me on tough spot.
That's why you're here. That's why you're here.
You know,
And I think that's why, thank you for saying that. And I think that's where I was going with earlier when, just right now, you're mentioning that it's for youth enrichment. This is not for youth enrichment. And that is why I keep saying, because it keeps being brought up. None of the modifications on this youth sports organization pilot project is about youth enrichment at all. And so if we are not even clear,
Well, I mean,
That's what I'm
that's why I
afraid.
suggested that we develop something else outside of this for youth enrichment, so that you have more time to deliberate. I agree with Member Orozco that, we can be at this for several more meetings and nothing, we don't learn from ourselves. And I really urge you to direct us to make those 2 revisions, bring it back for your final consideration at the next meeting.
Do we vote on that?
Do we
That's
vote
the
on the
question. Do we
revisions?
vote
Yeah.
on that?
You vote
Okay.
on the revisions and to direct us to bring it back in final form at your August meeting.
Okay, the 2 revisions we're gonna vote on to bring it back. That's was it 60% or 50%?
6-0.
6-0.
60, and the other one was 50%. So we'll it has to be just one or the other.
it's because it's 2 different things they're talking about. 50% of advancement payment,
Okay.
and then it is 60% of residents.
So the youth group has to have
Enrollment.
60% of their roster of kids that are in Ballin Park. And then if they apply for the grant and they get 5,000, they'll get 2,500 of it up front and then 2,500 at the end.
Okay.
So there's
Right.
money and there's a number of kids in the organization.
Anyone want to make a motion?
But I think Council Daniel wants to.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but now I have to. You're talking about a 60% roster of Baldwin Park kids. One thing that you would want to keep in mind, and I would be concerned about it, is that we're talking about Measure BP sales tax increase that the community is paying. And I think that we need to focus on our community. Not that, I don't want to sound cold-hearted and say that I don't care about other kids, of course not. But our priority is our Baldwin Park community, our kids here. So I would be inclined to increase that number from 60% to be 70 to 80% at least, because I know that there's going to be some kids that are going to be, coming from other cities, which I get and I understand. But I think if you stick with the 60% number, that may be too low. And you may get some community members that are going to be pretty upset about that. Because at the end of the day, this is money that we're paying in as sales tax. And we need to prioritize our kids here in the city. It's just something for you guys to consider.
I agree.
Yeah, like I said, that was to me, I don't really know youth sports. I don't know what percentage of the ones current in Baldwin Park are. That's why we talk about it. Like, opinions are all here, people. Like, please, we all should have different knowledge of the community. If we want to make it 70%, I'm also okay with that.
70 to 80%, I'm fine with that too. I mean, I run over 85%, Baldwin Park residents. I have kids coming from Pasadena to East LA here, but still my numbers are 85% Baldwin Park residents. So
I think
75, 80%, I'm good with either number.
I think 70 for that. I would vote
70%,
70%.
Baldwin Park.
Yes, I think 70% would be good.
Okay, 70%.
70%.
Okay, and
70%? Okay. Okay, with those two revisions, 70% for city residency and 50% advance pay.
amen. Yeah. Do we make a motion on that and vote on it?
Do we make a motion or?
You're directing us?
Yes.
Want to vote?
If we don't have to, and we just make that revision.
You could direct staff without a vote.
I say they
Wanna
vote,
vote?
Shirley, because,
Okay,
Let's take-
we want the record to reflect that that's what they directed us to do.
okay. So,
Is- Full motion.
make the motion.
I'll make a motion to raise the, what do you want to call
Make
it?
the
The
revisions.
to make the revisions for 50% of reimbursement upfront and to add a subline of for people that, for organizations that want the grant, that they have to have a minimum of 70% of their roster kids from Baldwin Park.
I second that motion.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
member Marta Carcamo,
Yes.
member Orozco,
Yes.
member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jackson,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, we're gonna move right along, because
Right.
time is moving right along. Thank you. Okay.
I do
but
have
I
a
do need-
question if I may. So are we going to do another pilot project? Is that what?
We're gonna work on this.
Okay, this one first?
We're not
Okay,
done.
I just wanted to make sure because I heard that, I thought you said that they were, or Enrique had mentioned that they would create another pilot project.
We could, but once you give us final approval on this.
On this one, okay,
can-
good. Oh, I just wanted to make sure and
Yeah.
clarify that we're just looking at one right now. Okay,
Mm.
thanks.
I just got a question. The second pilot will be the important thing or principal thing that the second pilot is going to take place. What is it? What is it going to be? Is it related to this right now?
I think I think
for
what was recommended was youth enrichment, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
still up for discussion. I don't think we have voted on anything.
Have a priority
Okay,
on them, but
okay.
that's what we would be working
Yes,
on.
that's what I'm staying quiet and trying to understand, well, all this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to go through all this money that the taxpayers are paying for so many projects that wasn't not even mentioned
Amen.
on the meetings that we had.
I completely agree with you. That's why I wanted to make sure that we were all agreeing that we were reviewing this, making the modifications, and that we were all understanding what this was about. And that's why I also was mentioning the notes of what the residents were highlighting, and it was not reflecting that. So I agree with you. I think we need to look at what the residents are actually
because
requesting.
I have some residents come to me and asking so many questions. They my only answer to like police department, park, streets, and trees, and I keep telling them, hey, everything is moving on slowly but surely. But we don't have the magic wand to do it overnight. We're gonna have to move slow and promise them and giving them what we promised them.
That's why I asked for about the minutes so we can stay on target of what the
Okay.
community want, because we can go what I call round robin. And we'll never get anything established. So we need to just stay pinpointed and on target and keep moving. So with that, I want to ask, have everybody read the minutes and want to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 14, 2024 meeting.
I'll second that.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Martha Capo,
Yes.
Member Orozco,
Yes.
Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jackson,
Yes,
motion passes.
good. Our next meeting, which was scheduled actually, July the 9th, will be, not so because of July the 14th, July the 4th. So our regular meeting will be, Tuesday, August the 13th, 2024 at 5 p.m. sharp. Man, okay, then with that, my mouth in the mic, a meeting adjourned.
Still there.
Wait, before you adjourn the meeting, between the audience, can you hear me? Between the audience and you guys up there, you guys made me lose my train of thought. Before you adjourn the meeting, I wanted to bring something up, if it was okay, to the SOC committee for recommendation. It wasn't agendized, but I want to see if maybe you guys want to agendize it. Speaking about funding for the community events, as you guys know, the Zocalo is going to be coming up pretty soon. We're looking at about an August date, right, Enrique, somewhere around there. So believe it or not, August is when we're looking at the grand opening of the Zocalo. However, as you guys know, that is a new project. So we don't have anything, we don't currently have anything in place to fund that. And what I mean by that is if you guys know what a Zocalo Plaza is, it's something that's for the community to come and congregate, right? And we want to make sure that we have something there on a weekly basis for the community to come and congregate, whether it's our youth, incorporating our youth school sports, our bands, our cheerleaders to come out and perform. But then also maybe once a month, host some type of event where we're going to pay for some type of entertainment to come there so that we have the Zocalo be kind of our anchor of our downtown. So with that being said, with the budget that we just were presented on Wednesday's council meeting, you guys may be aware or not, but we did hit almost close to a $3.1 million deficit on that because of the MOU negotiations. So we had to tap into the reserves for fiscal year 24-25 on our budget. So with the Zocalo coming online, you know, the last thing we want is for that to just be a ghost town, right? We want to make sure that that's filled with our community. Again, family from our children to our seniors and everyone in between. We want to make sure everyone comes out and congregates there. So I want to see if you guys are willing to recommend to the city council. And of course, this is, you know, this is up to you guys to recommend it or not, to allocate some sort of funding for different types of projects and events. What type of events? We don't know that yet. That would be up to city staff and Manny and the RCS team to come up with a calendar of events to host there. We would want to kind of save money by maybe reallocating some of our current events to the Zocalo. As an example, maybe the Christmas tree lighting, instead of doing it at Morgan Park, moving it to the Zocalo. So that this way we're kind of sharing the cost and we're not, you know, just spending more money there. But that's something that is going to be good for the entire community. So I would like to hear your guys' feedback, your guys' thought process on that. I know that, you know, one of the things that the community wanted was, from what I can recall, the number one thing that they wanted in their priority list was public safety. That's, you know, that's a big one. And trust me, I've been on the chief about the public safety aspect of that and having more, you know, police presence, which is, you know, he's trying to do everything he can to hire more police officers to bring them up to the parks. The second thing is more of community RCS projects and events. So this is within line of what the community wanted, but I wanted to, before I presented it to the city council, I wanted to bring it to you guys, bring it up to you guys to see what it is that your guys' feedback may be on that. And if it's something that you guys would consider to recommend to the city council. So if you guys have any feedback, I'd love to hear it.
So any feedback or discussion on this needs to be agendized. This is very much outside of the scope of what's allowed, outside of the items on the agenda. I do apologize, Councilmember Damian, but the deliberations and on potential projects for the SOC and involvement in the city is outside of any like staff reports or communications. We can add this to the agenda for the next meeting, but
So would we be able to ask if they would, because it would have to be consensus from them to add to the agenda, correct, for their SOC meeting?
it doesn't have to be a consensus. Any one member can request something to be added to the agenda for the next
Okay,
meeting.
got it.
Councilmember Damian, the way that I believe council is going to take this up is by requesting that the presentation be made to the SOC for what you just described. So they'll see it in their next agenda.
Oh, got it. And then you'll bring it back to the council.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I kind of brought it up to them. I didn't want, you know, for them to think that we were kind of overstepping your, you know, there's a reason why they're here.
Yeah. So yeah,
Like I
once
said, a
we
meeting
we present
adjourned.
it to you, we'll add it to the agenda for you.
I'll request that it gets added to the agenda.
All right.
Sunday. Zócalo, a la plaza. Mariachi every Sunday. Yeah. Yeah.
Meeting is adjourned.